Hi, it's Lord Aquamarine 18 Tarot and Books. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome or welcome back. I am here with a first look at a new deck to my collection. This is not an unboxing. I have taken a look through the deck, but it is very much a first impressions as I haven't shuffled it yet. I wanted to show you the deck before I did that. I mentioned in my last video that I was waiting on an oracle deck that I really hadn't seen around online very much, and that I would share it when it arrived. And this is that deck, L'Oracle de la Nature Sacrée, the Oracle of Sacred Nature by Sandy Champion. This is a deck that I stumbled upon at random on Etsy. I don't even remember what I was browsing at the time, but it's not a deck that I had heard of, and it just came up and it caught my eye. Folks know that I like kind of black and white and monochromatic decks and nature-based decks, and this is all of that. So I did a bit of, investigating, as one does. I looked at kind of the creator's work and the kinds of design work that the creator Sandy Champion is doing, and there's definitely some environmental themes there, some feminist themes there, and that intrigued me. There weren't a ton of pictures on the Etsy, so I knew how many cards there were, but not all the cards in the deck or anything like that. But I decided to take a chance, and I'm really pleased that I did. I'll link the Etsy shop below where I found this deck. It has the name Grancher on it here for a publisher. I'm not sure if they publish other decks or anything like that. It's quite possible. I'll just hold the back here so you can read it if you would like briefly, or you can pause it. It explains, that there are 60 cards and a guidebook with interpretations for each card and methods of using the deck. So the deck arrived in this box with kind of a well for the cards here. And the box is quite nice. It stays shut well. It has this kind of, not a thumb hole, but like an easy way to open the box. These leaves are a bit raised. I'm not sure if that will show up on the video or not, but they're kind of, you can feel them when you run your hand over them, which is a nice touch. The guidebook and the deck are entirely in French. So the guidebook that it comes with is roughly 78 pages plus a couple of pages here at the back with the thank you and about the creator, who is an artist and graphic designer, who created this deck with personal development in mind. So the deck has a total of 60 cards. I will walk through all of them. It has kind of 56, what I would say are kind of core oracle cards, and then it has 4 guide cards, which you could use as significators. You could use them as indicators of maybe where a particular message might be coming from. They're kind of separated out, as you'll see in the walkthrough. So we have a table of contents. The cards are numbered. It may be slightly confusing here. I'm not sure if you can see. There's a page number and then the number of the card, and those numbers are not the same. So for example, here at the top, card number 29, Le Départ, is on page 45. It's not hard to navigate in practice, but I did have to do a bit of a double take at that. There's some introductory content here, using an oracle, and then the contents, basically the contents of the box, right? The 56 cards and then the 4 additional ones, and some suggestions. Now, of course, if you're someone who reads with oracle decks, you don't probably need these suggestions, but they're there. Purifying one's cards, and it talks about sun, moon, and kind of smoke cleansing with a candle there. And then here, ways of reading. So a 1 card, you know, with a kind of description of how to do that. Right. A couple of examples of 1 card draws here, which is a nice touch. Like if you got either of these cards, it gives you an example. There's a 4 card spread, a 5 card spread, and then you get into the interpretations. So for each card, you get a full page. And just to break down kind of a page of the guidebook here, you get the card's title, a picture of the card. The card, as I mentioned, is numbered. The number of the card is up here, and the page number of the book is here. So just something to keep in mind. It's very easy to navigate, you know, flicking through to find card 35, for example. It's good. So you can see here the word positif, positive. Each card in this deck is classified as positive, neutral, or negative. I'll get into that a bit more as I walk through the deck. Mots-clés, keywords, gives you a couple of keywords in addition to the title of the card. And then it gives you an interpretation and a kind of note on symbolism. I have not read this guidebook in its totality. French is very much my second language. It's not beyond my capacity to read this book in full, but I also find the deck, for me personally, is not one that I'm necessarily going to need to be looking up interpretations in the guidebook all the time, but there is a fair amount of text if you are a guidebook person. So there's quite a lot to work with there. The cards came in just a band, this is like a paper band that I will not keep. I don't have a deck to compare the size to. They're not far off from a standard tarot size. So that will give you some idea. I'll zoom in a bit here. Okay. The cardstock is not the best, but also definitely not the worst. It feels like it will hold up well. It does have a bit of a gloss on it, but I wouldn't call it like glossy cardstock. It also it is very smooth. It's not clumpy. It's not sticky. It will shuffle very well, I'm quite sure. These are the backs. So you can see here that the backs are not quite reversible. Not quite, because you've got a crescent moon there and a full moon there. So if you were working with a reversal, you would be able to tell that from the back. But it's very subtle, obviously. I think that, you know, if you wanted to read them with reversals and not know, you could easily just not look at that. Because for the most part it is reversible. Now I've mentioned that the cards are labeled as positive, neutral, and negative. Now that is only in the guidebook. There is nothing on the physical cards themselves to indicate whether or not they're positive, whether they're negative, whether they're neutral. I will mention that there are not an equal number of those three things. So cards 1 to 25, which is nearly half the deck, are positive. Cards 26 to 42 are neutral. Cards 43 to 56 are labeled negative. And then there's the 4 cards again, the kind of person cards or significator cards that kind of stand on their own, which I would treat as neutral. Now, with this said, I will say that a lot of the cards to me read as neutral, whether they're classified as neutral in the deck or not. I will talk a little bit more about this, with some examples as we go through. But, the fact that this has 25 of the cards labeled as positive does not mean that this deck skews positive or affirmative to me at all. I think it will read rather, because I haven't shuffled it yet. It will read very neutrally, I think. A lot of the cards are very much open to interpretation, and I think could appear quite neutral depending on the question that you were asking. There are definitely a few that I would not say are neutral, but I would say that a lot of them are. I will also just say at the outset, again, French is my second language. Forgive my pronunciation. I will share like what the English word for these are. I may miss, in talking about the positive, negative, neutral, some kind of connotations of the French terms. So do, have graciousness with me. And if you're a French speaker, let me know in the comments if I've made any egregious mistakes. I'm happy to know about that. So card 1, l'amour, love. And you can see the numbers are kind of vertical. So that number at the top there is 01, card 1. There's a lot of these vines running through the deck, which I think are really beautiful. Card 2 is influence. And again, this is a card that is labeled positive in the guidebook. But I don't think that influence is necessarily always positive. I could see maybe a hint of a malefic planet there, right? So I think that this could be read as a very neutral card, even though it's classified as positive in the book. Refuge or shelter. And I think, obviously this is going to be different person to person. For me, as somebody whose first language is not French, I find this quite an easy to read deck. A lot of the French card titles do really look like they're English words. So, while someone who doesn't speak any French at all is definitely going to have to do some looking up, or maybe, could write in pencil in the guidebook or something like that, I think a lot of them are quite clear for English-speaking readers. La naissance is birth. I have a fern unfurling. The cycle. We have a flower there. L'élaboration is like development. Le soutien is support. L'exploration, I'm sure quite obvious, exploration. And the imagery for me goes with the titles, but it's nice. I think something that makes it feel like quite a neutral deck is it's not overly constraining imagery. Like, to me, an exploration could go well or poorly. Exploration could be, quite a neutral card, and there's nothing in this card to necessarily skew it one way or the other. This is, again, a positive card, according to the labeling in the book. Clairvoyance. Listening. Destiny. Instinct. So again, like, some of the words in French and English are effectively the same, right? I like this image for instinct of this kind of plant being illuminated inside of where, someone's gut is, like a gut feeling, something that just is instinctual. I think that's really clever. L'élévation, elevation. L'amitié, amity, friendship. You can see these two are holding holding little root hands there. La famille, a family. Like that kind of concentric circles growing outward. La santé is health. So here we have kind of the breathing lungs taking in the world. And again, health, you know, is labeled as a positive card in the book, but obviously health can, you know, be experienced in all kinds of ways, and one's health can be something that is not always well. So that could turn up a lot of ways in a reading, I think. Abundance. La connaissance is knowledge. Union, as it sounds, as it looks. Le lâcher prise, letting go. You have the balloon there floating without anybody holding it or anything to hold it in place. La sérénité, serenity. Think of a peaceful pond with the fish there. Balance. Perhaps equilibrium. I would say balance. I have a globe there. Convivialité, you know, conviviality in English, friendliness, social, like sociality maybe. The wine glass for convivial atmosphere. Le soleil, of course, the sun. And there is a moon card. It's just not. It's not next, but there is one. I will mention. La résilience, resilience. You see the plant bursting through a hard ground there. Sexuality. You have this one match lighting another match, which I think is an interesting choice for sexuality. It's, you know, completely gender neutral representation. And sexuality is a neutral card in the deck. So now we're into the neutral cards. Le corps is the body. A hand there. L'esprit is not spirit or soul. This is more mind or intellect. Le départ, departure. La force, force. We're used to seeing La Force as a title in French tarot decks, of course. Le temps is time. Slipping through the fingers there. La lune. So the moon. I'll just put the sun card beside the moon for fun here. There are a couple of cards that could be seen as perhaps pairs in some way. Here the wings are out on the right and kind of more folded down on the left, and we have suns and moons there. La passion, of course, passion. Le débat is debate. I think that boomerang is an interesting choice for debate. It evokes a kind of back and forth dynamic. And this is labeled as a neutral card. Isolement, isolation. You can see this one tree here down below, separate from the rest. And this is another card that is positioned as being neutral. Certainly in some reading context it might feel negative, I think, but it's neutral as a concept. Le retard, in French, this means delay. And so we have the sand not elapsing through there. The bouleversement, this is like this is a tower moment. Upheaval, maybe? That's a tower moment kind of word. And you can see this kind of breaking apart there. Le hasard, this it is not hazard. It means more like chance. Maybe there would be a pearl inside. Chance. La mort is death. I think that's a really powerful image for a death card. And death in this deck is labeled as a neutral. Illusion. So there's a reflection there. Ego, as one would expect this to translate to ego. There's a mirror here. Le passé, the past. La solitude. And here begin the negative labeled cards. So this I understand to have a connotation of loneliness. Now one could, as a first language English speaker, I would say that, solitude, which I'm looking at this. Solitude, I would not say in English is a negative word inherently, but this has a lonely connotation. And if I go to the book, there definitely is some of that borne out, I think, in the description. Dépendance, dependency. Quarrel. A quarrel like an argument. Manipulation. And again, I don't think the word manipulation in English is an inherently negative word. You can manipulate, tools to make something, but definitely there's a connotation here, I think, of someone being manipulative towards someone else. Though when you're, of course, working with the cards, you may think something different. Tristesse is sadness. Triste is sad. This is a threat, like something menacing. And this is a snake in this image. I hope that's clear. Maybe I can get, there we go. Yeah, it's a snake there. La fortune, misfortune. readers will recognize. Judgment. Like all eyes on the person. And again, Judgment is a negative card in this deck. I don't understand Judgment to be a negative concept necessarily, but certainly there's that interpretation of kind of being judged here. La maladie, malady, disease. I'm not sure 100% how to pronounce this. La trahison. I'm not sure how to emphasize that. H is betraying. Active betrayal. Ruin. I think it's interesting in the Ruin card you have these fungi here coming alongside. Inconstance, inconstancy. La peur is fear. And la colère is anger. Now these are the 4 cards at the end that I mentioned are separate. There is some discussion in the guidebook of how one might use these. I haven't, again, really engaged with the guidebook very much yet. I mean, they could be some kind of significator card if you wanted them to be. But they're the messenger, the child, the ancestor, and the stranger. So these are characterized as guide cards in the guidebook. So that is a look at the Oracle of Sacred Nature by Sandy Champion. Have you ever seen this deck before? Do you have this deck? This is one that I really had not seen around, and I was quite excited to find and that I'm looking forward to working with. Off the top of my head, I think that this will look really good with a couple of decks in my collection. I have a good little selection of black and white decks that I could put it with, but also a really vibrantly colorful deck with it might look good. It's a good shuffle, as I suspected. I feel like this deck might also lend itself to more of a kind of maybe cartomancy style reading. I'm going to experiment. I will report back as to what I find. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with these cards yet. But I like how they look laid out. I'm not always a fan of this much kind of blank space. I will say it's not white space. I was going to call it white space. This is kind of a beige. It almost looks, yeah, I don't know if you'll be able to tell. It's kind of flecked, but it's like a very, very light beige. There. So I'm quite excited. Thank you for watching, and I will see you again soon.